116 years old before he's eligible for parole. Plus,
obviously, I'm very proud to be a Maple Leaf today.
Austin Matthews signs on the dotted line. He's sticking with the Maple Leafs for at least the next 5 years. And winter is set to return. Salt trucks are hitting the roads tonight. Freezing rain is in the forecast for tomorrow. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. The Crown wants Bruce McArthur to spend the next half-century behind bars. Today, the man who admitted to killing 8 men was labeled one of Canada's most dangerous offenders and a sexual predator who is beyond rehabilitation. John Lancaster was in the court today as those who knew his victims had one final chance to describe how McArthur shattered their lives.
Bruce McArthur's many victims can no longer be heard, so their loved ones spoke for them today.
What I shared with the court this morning was just the far-reaching impacts of the grief and loss and the horror that came with the experience of Salim's murder and the indignity that occurred to him, or that was thrust upon him.
One after another describing the carnage McArthur has left behind.
I was actually surprised that I was able to look up and look in his eyes, and he was looking right at me, and because I didn't know whether he'd be face up or face down, and he looked pretty upset, which of course he's upset, but I guess I was shocked by the emotion in his face.
He just came to Canada to save his life.
Paranavan Thankoel told the court he spent 3 months at sea with Karushna Kanagaratnam, both refugees fleeing violence in Sri Lanka, hoping to find peace in Canada. We were powerless people, he told the court, but we felt such joy about arriving in Canada. But Kanagaratnam vanished. His friends were too afraid to report him missing for fear he'd be deported. McArthur prayed in that vulnerability, say police, just like he did with Dean Lusowick, a homeless man, the court was told, whose mother died, never knowing what happened to him. Andrew Kinsman's sister described teaching him how to swim and ride a bike as a kid. Do not let his death be just a statistic, she told the court. Do something good for someone. Give someone a hug. Most of all, be kind, she said. Other families described being left broken and broke, now relying on food banks after their loved ones were no longer around to help raise their families. Prosecutors urged the court to sentence McArthur to life in prison with no parole for at least 50 years, essentially ensuring the 67-year-old dies in prison. They described McArthur as a sexual predator who kept his own cemetery of victims, hiding the remains of his victims in flower planters and a garbage bin, all the while prizing the trinkets he stole from them and relishing in the disturbing photographs showing what he'd done to them. The judge asked McArthur if he had anything to say for himself, to which he replied, no thank you. He'll come back to this court on Friday for sentencing. After that, it's likely he may never leave prison again. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
A Toronto officer's professional misconduct case in connection with McArthur has been put over until later this month. Sergeant Paul Gauthier was not in the courtroom today. His lawyer appeared on his behalf, asking the tribunal to assign an independent adjudicator, namely a judge, to hear the case. McArthur's statement of fact released yesterday tells of a night McArthur brought a man to his van. Once inside, McArthur violently grabbed his throat. Now that man escaped and called 911. McArthur turned up at the station and said the interaction was consensual. He was arrested but released. Gauthier's case was put over until February 26th. And to some other stories we're following tonight, a public meeting this evening addressing the complaints of anyone who's ever been kept awake from the noise of a nearby construction project. You know the sound? Well, the city wants to review and possibly update its current noise bylaws by looking at everything from construction noise to leaf blowers to loud music from bars and patios. The bylaws haven't been updated since 2002.
It's really important for residents of the city to have some quiet and not have unwanted noise intrude on them. And as we're a growing city, we can't rely on old bylaws that are just...
The city says it receives 11,000 noise complaints every year. There's one more public meeting about this tomorrow, dealing with noisy neighbors. Everything from loud musical instruments to backyard parties. And a warning from public health tonight. Some travelers through Pearson Airport last month may have been exposed to measles. Now, this only applies to anyone in Terminal 1 on Sunday, January 27th from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. In particular, those most at risk include anyone near passengers from Lufthansa flight LH470 from Frankfurt at 4:08 p.m. or those who connected to Air Canada flight AC834 or LH2829 that left Toronto at 6 p.m. from Montreal. Authorities urge anyone who may have been exposed to check their immunization records and watch for symptoms of the measles. It is going to be a busy overnight for winter road maintenance crews across southern Ontario. The City of Toronto says the salt is at the ready as it prepares streets for what is in store tomorrow. Meteorologist Colin Kennedy's here with a first look at the forecast, and boys, it's a doozy tomorrow. It's going to be a mess.
It is a doozy. Really hazardous weather conditions that we're looking at. Slippery conditions, mostly freezing rain, ice pellets. Either way, you can get some ice accretion there, and not great on our roads for sure, and on our sidewalks for everyone, drivers, walking, biking, those of you who do bike in the winter. So hazardous travel conditions with the freezing rain and the ice pellets that could build up to 2 to 4 centimeters. The areas you see here in blue are in the winter weather travel advisory, and then the freezing rain warning extends all the way back into southwestern Ontario. And then what we're going to be seeing is how this is going to play out. So what's going to happen is that it moves in first to southwestern Ontario. It's already beginning, in fact, coming in as freezing rain. But closer to the city and points eastward, it looks like ice pellets first, then changing over to some freezing rain. Could even be a little snow mixing in with those ice pellets, then late morning into early afternoon becoming freezing rain. The freezing rain more extensive, though, through the day for sections like Hamilton west towards London and down into southwestern Ontario. It becomes intermittent overnight, Thursday into Thursday morning, but then a little more moisture comes in, and so even a little freezing drizzle possible into Thursday morning before the temperature rises and turns it over to rain showers. Overnight tonight, -7 we're looking at for you with this mix moving in late overnight, and tomorrow afternoon we'll be seeing still that mix, but more likely freezing rain into the afternoon hours with -2 being the high.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
I did call the city and they said it would be cleared within 36 hours. They apologized. They didn't realize that it hadn't been cleared. This morning, still the same thing.
We brought you this woman's story yesterday. She pointed out some uncleared sidewalks near her mother's seniors' home 7 days after last week's storm. Well, now the mayor is taking action. John Tory has written to the general manager of Transportation Services asking for a review of the city's winter operations. Tory said his office alone had more than 150 calls and emails complaining about snow removal, with many focusing, like that woman, on the sidewalks. The review will look at whether service levels should be increased, determining the threshold for when to declare a major snow event, and the benefits of harmonizing the city's sidewalk clearing. Well, with the fluctuating temperatures we're seeing this week, the melting water, then the freezing rain, Toronto officials are warning this is making icy waterways particularly dangerous. The police message to everyone: stay off the ice so you don't become the Marine unit's next victim. Chris Glover has more.
Okay, sir, I'm gonna help you.
This is just practice, but drilling and rescue techniques is how the Toronto Police Marine Unit saves lives. Constable Jeff Lucifora can't forget a call his squad received last October. A canoeist had capsized near Toronto's Cherry Beach.
We basically flew over there in one of our Zodiacs, and we were there in minutes. And as we got there, the gentleman was actually going down. His arm was sticking out of the water. And when we got there, we grabbed onto him, and we basically pulled him onto the boat, and we literally saved his life. Seconds count. 5 seconds, 10 seconds later, he would have been gone.
We strapped underwater cameras to the officers this morning for a submersive look at their refresher course.
I'm gonna get in behind you. Are you able to kick at all?
In this training, what is it like playing the victim?
It's good because you get to see the angle from the victim's view.
What these guys are doing, they have a line tethered typically to shore or to some anchor point. And what they'll do is they'll bring the Marsar board, which is that flat board, they'll bring them out with them along with the rescue sling. They'll communicate with the victim and try to do everything we can to safely get to that victim, put that rescue sling around him, and then get him onto that board and pull him out of the water.
It's a little bit surprising to see the rescuer go right in the water.
Sometimes you have to, because we have victims that are hypothermic at times, and so sometimes they are not able to kick themselves to get out, so we have to assist them in getting out of the water.
Instructor Constable Jeff Clark says one significant problem is great pet owners making terrible decisions to run out on the ice after their pet.
But the risk is now they're a victim, and usually the pet will get out, and the owner or the person that owns a pet will actually end up in the water, and we have to rescue them.
While they say it's gratifying to save a life, don't test them. The warning is avoid icy waterways, especially when the temperature swings.
It's old ice. It's been around for a while, and now with this mild temperatures, anybody could break through at any time.
When the Marine unit breaks through the ice, they have dry suits, heavy-duty life jackets, and gear that helps them save their own life too.
I also have a set of ice picks with me, and if I get stuck in the water for some reason I need to pull myself out, then I can use these in order to get
above
out
all else,
training kicks in, and muscle memory just kicks in, and you just do what you got to do.
That's what makes today's chili drills so vital. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
And we shot some of that footage with 360-degree cameras. You can check out that video for yourself. Just head to our website, cbc.ca/Toronto.
Gardner got it. Long shot from the blue line. Stop. They score on the rebound. Austin Matthews.
And the kid is staying. Austin Matthews and the Maple Leafs agreed to a 5-year contract extension today. It isn't cheap. Matthews will make, on average, $11.6 million a year. The vast majority of his salary will come through signing bonuses. Matthews says it's not all about the money, though.
Regardless of making $1 or $11 million, I mean, I'm not going to change who I am. I'm going to be myself every day. In the end, you're measured on championships, and that's what I want to do here is help this team and be productive in any way I can to win a championship, and that's the ultimate goal.
Matthews is the reigning Calder Cup champion as the league's most valuable rookie. As it stands now, the Leafs are second in the Eastern Conference. They play Ottawa tomorrow night. Well, Gong Hei Fat Choi, it's the Lunar New Year. While many are celebrating the long-standing traditions at this time of year, some younger Chinese professionals are trying to create some new ways to celebrate the date. We'll have that story a little later in our newscast. The electricity at an apartment building in the St. Jamestown neighborhood will be cut tomorrow on purpose. The city is doing an electrical safety inspection at 280 Wellesley Street as a precaution. You'll recall 2 nearby buildings owned and operated by the same company had electrical fires recently. Hundreds were forced into the dark last month at 260 Wellesley. And last August, an electrical fire at 650 Parliament kicked hundreds out of the building. Now, tomorrow's preemptive inspection will disconnect power for the building for about 12 hours, beginning at 8 a.m. As the city moves ahead with a plan to build affordable housing on 11 city-owned properties, some advocates say Scarborough is being left out of the mix since just 2 of those locations are in that part of the city. With a growing demand, advocates say it's time, once and for all, for rooming houses to be legalized. Farah Morali explains.
Inside the small offices of West Scarborough Community Legal Services, Ramalingam Setu speaks to a worker about his living situation. He fled war-torn Sri Lanka in the 90s and has struggled for decades to find affordable housing.
How long have you been living in rooming houses for? How many years?
23 years. I am come over here, my country here, 1996. I am stayed at the rooming house.
It's the only place Setu can afford, despite that they're illegal in Scarborough.
I am now pensioner. $1,400 my income. Now I am pay the rooming house and $700.
The whole housing crisis really hit Scarborough heavily, and many people like Ramalingam, and even people who are making minimum wage, people on social assistance, low-income earners.
When it comes to affordable housing, the city recently approved a new plan to build thousands of new units. The Housing Now program will build on 11 city-owned properties. The idea is to construct 10,000 units, of which 3,600 will be affordable. But only 2 of the projects are in Scarborough, and they're both in the same ward. We know that the city has identified these 11 spaces where it's going to be building affordable housing. Are you encouraged by that?
It's not sufficient because of our crisis, and we have been knocking for many years.
Community advocate Marcia Farrell says it's time for a plan B.
Rooming houses is not legalized in Scarborough, and that's what we're trying to get rooming houses legalized, because what that will be doing is going to increase the amount of units available for families, low income.
Today, the newly elected councillor for Scarborough's Ward 20 celebrated Chinese New Year with the mayor. She said she still needs to do more research on rooming houses.
Well, at this point in time, I have not gathered enough information, and there's pros and cons, and I really want to be very careful. But, you know, like I said, my concern is about safety.
As for the Housing Now sites, Tory said they weren't chosen based on need.
We did not pick these sites, or the staff didn't, of the city with a view to sort of where they were geographically, as much as that they were the ones that seemed most obviously available for this purpose as quickly as possible.
As for Setu, it's the waiting game. He's been on the list for a spot in a community housing building now for almost a decade.
10 years I wait for that. Now what can I do?
Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Very quickly.
Well, think of this live shot downtown as a bit of a calm before tomorrow's storm. Freezing ice pellets and freezing rain just in time for the morning commute and sticking around for the ride home. Colette will have the details next.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Well, the Raptors kicking off a 3-game road trip in Kyle Lowry's hometown, Philadelphia. Tonight, some nice second chances in the second. Fred VanVleet steals the ball, a poor pass to DeLon right there. He catches it, stays in bound, connects with Serge Ibaka. Later, Lowry, watch this one coming up, tries for a 3-shot. It is short, but DeLon grabs the board, and on the bounce, he makes no mistake on his second effort. Raps up by a season-high 72 points at the break, but Philly puts up a fight in the fourth. Sixers managed to pull within 7, but Toronto holds on to win this one, 119-107. Colette's back with her extended look at the forecast. We had really warm temperatures yesterday, now a freezing rain warning for tomorrow. What's going on?
This is a really messy and somewhat complex system that's moving in. But what's happening is, remember all that polar air that we had, the polar vortex and those very, very cold temperatures? Well, they haven't left northern Ontario. Some of that colder air is pushing down further south, coming back towards the lower Great Lakes, but overriding it, milder temperatures. I mean, look at the eastern seaboard. There were some of those readings from this afternoon, yet we've got readings in the -20s to the north. So as that colder air is digging in at the surface, but then warmer air overrides it, what happens is the precipitation, as it gets closer to the surface, if it's a deep layer of colder air, it will freeze into ice pellets or sleet before it hits the ground. If it's a shallow layer of cold air underneath that warm air, it actually freezes on contact and we get into the freezing rain situation. And it does appear that we're going to have a bit of both. Certainly through the GTA, we're looking at ice pellets changing to freezing rain. It's coming in as freezing rain for southwestern Ontario, and by afternoon it should change over to freezing rain for just about everyone. Now, it will become a little more intermittent as we go later in the day Wednesday, but I still think the afternoon commute is going to be nasty. And as we see this going into Thursday morning, we'll get breaks in it, and then it comes back in, maybe just as some lighter stuff like freezing drizzle, but into Thursday morning, still having that possibility. Then the temperature will come up enough above freezing that it changes it over to just plain old rain showers that we'll be seeing. So this is why it just such a mess that we will be having on the roadways, and 2 to 4 centimeters of some of that ice building up, especially where we have the ice pellets. Strong winds out of the east as we head overnight for southwestern Ontario, -4 to -6, those lows. Tomorrow afternoon with that freezing rain, it'll kind of mix at times with rain further south especially, so you may get it coming back as rain and then back into freezing rain and be seeing that sort of right on that line there. Overnight, we're going to see this moving in late overnight. It's really towards tomorrow morning, so it will begin towards Hamilton a little bit earlier, but reaching in towards the city 7, 8 a.m., and of course that does affect the morning commute, with that tomorrow afternoon being affected as well, and possibly, as I've been saying, even into Thursday morning's commute, we could be having some trouble until that temperature warms up, and that's why it becomes all liquid. Friday, a little bit better, just a chance for some flurries. Saturday, nice sky conditions, but -5, and we bring back the wind chill, feeling like -11 as we go into the weekend, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, today marks the beginning of the Lunar New Year. There are celebrations across the GTA, especially this weekend, and you'll notice shops filled with a lot of red and gold. Those are considered lucky colors. There's a new generation of Asian Canadians who want to put their own stamp on the festivities. As Ali Chiasson tells us, they're hoping to bring a modern touch to an old tradition.
We met some new gen Asian Canadians who are reconnecting with their heritage this year. Henny Chang and Ananda Gabo are doing that by opening Tea Base, a pop-up space for workshops and community talks.
I wish I had this place when I was 14 and hated being Chinese. My parents were immigrants, so I feel like I really rejected them for not fitting in and not doing all the things the white kids were doing. Like, do you relate to what I'm saying? Like,
I definitely tried fitting in with like the white kids, and it was hard because I'm like half white, half Chinese. And so the white kids were like, "You can't play with us because you're Chinese," and the Chinese kids were like, "You're not Chinese enough." And I was like, "Oh, frick."
Out of this vacant retail space in the Chinatown Center, they've created a safe space for everyone to celebrate the Lunar New Year, starting with a dumpling workshop tonight.
And be surrounded by other like Southeast, East Asian artists, queers, you know, just like to be surrounded by that and see myself in everyone and be so proud.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Before we go, we want to look at a story we'll bring you tomorrow. It's been almost a quarter century since Toronto Police Constable Todd Bayless was shot and killed while in the line of duty. His killer will be up for parole in June after serving 25 years. Bayless's brother has started an online petition to keep him behind bars, and it's getting a lot of support. Arkel de Yun sat down with him in this broadcast exclusive.
You know, we were talking about it, and I said, I don't think people care anymore. It's been 25 years. I just don't think they do. And, you know, they're kind of depressed and thinking about it like, Jesus, you know, I got to figure out something that I can do to bring attention to this and make this known. You know, this is my brother, this is my family, right? You don't mess with people's families. And then it started, and I'm like, you know, we were just talking tonight, and she's like, it looks like you were wrong, eh?
We'll bring you that full story tomorrow. You can read all about it on our website, cbc.ca, tomorrow morning, and catch it on CBC Radio. Now, both radio and our website, guaranteed, will be busy keeping track of any school bus cancellations with that freezing rain coming in tomorrow. You can listen for those updates starting around 6 a.m. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night. Stay safe on the roads.